All the second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with Buddy.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 409. Custom made? Not quite. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator Lauren Brooks, and the personification. Hello. And the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based on my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You bastard. That was fucking genius.
Shit. Sorry. We are missing one Richard the Lionhearted for now. If he comes in, he comes in. But I'll have to find out later. In the meantime, we are still looking at the most awful subject matter I could find. And it's not because I was looking for awful subject matter. It's because this shit has to be discussed. It's important for several reasons. One of which, I've said numerous times that men need to be a bigger voting bloc. We need a higher percentage of men voting. And they need to be voting men's interest first and other issues second. Because men's interest is staying alive and not getting drafted, not getting taxed to death, and not having your children taken away in a divorce. Things like that. Getting your kids a real education and not having them indoctrinated with communism and mental health conditions that they didn't start out with. And, this is pretty basic stuff. It's not champagne and caviar. It's not, champagne wishes and caviar dreams. It's live and let live. It's don't get taken advantage of. It's don't get used as cannon fodder. That's pretty important. And this is important in the same way. Because if assisted suicide is being used improperly, and it is being used on people with mental health conditions that are treatable or other conditions that are treatable, that's a very big problem. With male disposability as a major men's issue, it's really bad news if an assisted suicide law is being passed in any nation without proper safeguards against abuse. Because if it doesn't have those safeguards, it will be abused. Even when it does, it gets abused. And that's what this story is about today, an attempt at abusing a law that does actually have safeguards. They're not supposed to be able to do what they did. And that should scare the shit out of you. Because especially if you've ever had depression, if you've ever been suicidal, if you've ever loved anybody that was for a short time suicidal and, was ever depressed. Because it doesn't take very long to get approved, get through the system, and get euthanized with these systems. So, sorry, that part of the rest of the show is probably not going to be funny. But with that, I will get into, we got to do what we got to do before we do anything else. And that is, as always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platforms tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justatip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. But with that out of the way, we will get into the story. And sorry, I might sound a little breathless today. The smoke from the burning of the ad revenue at various media platforms, entertainment media platforms that are sort of social entertainment media like YouTube, it's really getting to me lately. I shouldn't say that. That's terrible. So, we have this news story. Vancouver woman offered MAID. Now, this is not a new story. I believe this happened like a couple of years ago or a year ago. It'll say lower down here on the page. But it's in conjunction with this discussion because the UK is still trying to pass their assisted suicide law. And, Canadian MAID is particularly, I don't know, it's kind of scary to me because of how quickly it has just sort of erupted. And this is exactly the problem I have with it. It's supposed to be for people who are in a situation where they are definitely going to die. You're not going to survive this ailment. It is going to kill you. There is nothing modern medicine can do. And the only options we have are ways to make you comfortable and reduce your pain. Like, this is something that they tell cancer patients at various stages where it's too late and the chemo and radiation that they used isn't going to work. There are other illnesses that are terminal that they don't know how to treat. There's certain types of like strokes and stuff like that can happen where you didn't really get any warning, but you're going to live for another maybe 6 weeks as your body starts to shut down. And the best that they can do is make sure that you don't have to feel any more of it than absolutely unavoidable, right? Then it's absolutely unavoidable. But now they have this assisted suicide. So when you're in that situation, they can allow you to exit before it happens, before you go through all that. That's what that's supposed to be for, right?
And you just know that's going to end up as 1% of the cases. Much like we often hear in the abortion debate. Well, you don't want women to be able to abort if in cases of rape and incest. Well, maybe, but that's less than 1%. And yeah, we're going to get the same thing with this. People are going to be killed by the government because they were a bit sad one day. And when we attempt to argue with this, we're going to be told, oh, so you don't want people to be able to avoid like a month of extreme agony when they cannot possibly be cured? And and then we look at what's going on in Canada and what percentage of the deaths is actually from an intractable, like, terminal disease. It's probably not 1% yet, but if the government keeps doing what it's doing and the people don't fight back, then it's going to shrink to below 1%, where the vast majority of people being officially killed by the government do not need to be killed by the government. They're just a bit sad or some shit, you know?
Yep. And so what exactly are they offering MAID for in Canada? Well, it turns out, and I've seen a few other stories It's being offered as an alternative to medical treatment in a variety of cases now. But this one was pretty egregious. Vancouver woman offered MAID before receiving any treatment at hospital. And as you can see, she's like about 26, 27. No, wait, she's old and gray. Elderly Vancouver woman offered MAID before receiving any treatment at hospital. 84-year-old woman who visited Canadian hospital was offered MAID before receiving any other treatment. They didn't do anything for her. They just immediately offered her, well, would you like to commit suicide?
And it's not suicide, by the way. It's murder. It's first-degree murder by the government.
Right. This one's not as old as I thought. This is not the one from a couple of years ago. This is March. This is a couple of months ago. So this recently happened. An 84 woman who visited a Canadian hospital was offered MAID before receiving any other treatment. Posted on X, Amanda Achtman, the founder of the Dying to Meet You project, posted a clip of Miriam Lancaster, who explains in April last year she got out of bed in excruciating pain. Lancaster's daughter called an ambulance, and Lancaster was sent to Vancouver General Hospital. Okay, this is going to be a challenge for me just because Lancaster is a city on the eastern side of Ohio. Like, this is the woman. Lancaster is the woman. My brain is not going to accept that for a while. At the hospital, instead of treating her, the first thing the doctor offered her was MAID. As Lancaster tells the Western Standard, once she arrived at the hospital to be treated, no tests had been taken. All I knew was that I was in an emergency ward and was approached by a doctor, which I was expecting. And the first thing the doctor did was ask about MAID. I was taken aback. That was the last thing on my mind. I just wanted to find out why I was in pain. I did not want to die, recalled Lancaster in Achtman's clip. And this is the lady. I believe this is the same quote.
I am 84 years old, and a year ago,
Nope.
an amazing thing happened. When I got out of bed one morning, I was suddenly in excruciating pain, so much so that my daughter came running in from another room. She called an ambulance. Off I went to the Vancouver General Hospital, and I was approached by a young lady doctor whose very first words out of her mouth is, "We would like to offer you MAID." I was taken aback. That was the last thing on my mind. I just wanted to find out why I was in pain. I did not want to die. And I was a month in hospital, came home and recuperated nicely enough that I could take some trips. Off I went last year to Cuba, before the problems today in Cuba. And then this just recently, I have been to Mexico and Guatemala. So my recovery.
So in other words, this almost looks like a Kids in the Hall sketch, right? I went to the doctor and they tried to kill me. And she's still flabbergasted. You can see her expression is just absolutely flabbergasted.
Mm-hmm.
Has been amazing, and there was no need for MAID to even be suggested.
And it just blew my mind when I saw this story, because I thought, I know the thing that I had been arguing with people about was, this needs to be set up so that, first of all, it's the patient requesting information, not the doctor suggesting, not the hospital suggesting. The insurance company shouldn't be denying people coverage and then saying, but we'll pay for MAID, and things like that. Those should not be happening. But I hadn't considered the idea of, oh, you're 84 years old. Well, would you like to kill yourself? Like, are you kidding me? But that's what happened.
Yeah, so for every one of you dipshit Americans that somehow think that, oh, universal health care is a good thing. No. It's not health care. It's health care up to a point where they're just deciding that, you know what, we'd rather just get rid of you.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you think about it. You like your HMO? Your health management organization? How many people here just love their health management organization? I don't know if they're still doing that. My insurance company doesn't engage one of those. But an HMO was an organization that used I guess a battery of doctors, a flock of doctors. I don't know what you would call them, but they were supposed to be doctors anyway in the insurance company who would go through cases and decide whether or not the insurance company should cover it on the basis of whether the medical care involved was what they would have recommended in the same case. So, for instance, let's say you have a situation where your doctor says you need knee surgery or you're going to lose the ability to walk. And you need to lose this much weight in order to have this knee surgery, or you're not going to be able to recover. And since you've had difficulty, we're going to add this medication, and here's how you're going to step down from it. And it's all in order that you have to do this because of each cascading reason. And here's how you're going to recover from it, and you're not going to be on this medication forever, but you're going to keep your weight down, and here's the plan, and so on. The HMO goes, no, we aren't going to pay for that because this person's reason for needing to lose weight that fast isn't because they're dying from weight-related conditions, and we're not going to approve the surgery because they're too fat. So catch-22, right? And that's one that I remember from a friend, and that situation just spiraled out of control until they finally gave up and didn't have the surgery and ended up getting to the point where they could have had the medication because they were dying from weight related conditions. But that kind of behavior, like Obamacare was supposed to address that and make it stop, right? No more denying people without some sort of process, where you can appeal in that. It doesn't work very well. You still have difficulty with all of that. And in fact, to the degree that, say, you have a family doctor and it's not the healthcare plan that your company has doesn't have that health clinic in their plan, so they won't pay your doctor directly. You have to pay your doctor, and then you have to send paperwork to them to get your payment back. My insurance company for years was not associated with my doctor, wouldn't pay my doctor, but at the same time, when I would send them the paperwork, they would always ignore it. And then when I would contact them, it was, oh, well, this part wasn't filled out correctly. We need this other additional unrelated information.
Oh my God.
Until, eventually my company wasn't with that insurance company anymore, and they wouldn't talk to me about collecting that money back because we were no longer insured with them. And even though we had been at that time, because we were no longer customers, they didn't want to talk to me.
Wow.
Which is like, yeah, wow. I would have had to go through the state. There is a process to go through the state. It is a huge pain in the ass. And unfortunately, that all happened during COVID. So bye money.
Like I said the other week, there's two kinds of healthcare. There's private and there's government subsidized, socialized medicine. And they both have their sort of pitfalls. The problem with private healthcare is their incentive is profit. And so they're incentivized to keep you alive, but on their drugs and with their operations for as long as possible so they can keep raking in the money. But the problem with socialized healthcare is what we are encountering in this article, in this general story. They are incentivized to just not have you there. They're already being paid. They don't care about profit. They're already getting billions from the fucking government, and it is just going to keep coming no matter what. So they're not incentivized to keep you alive. On quite the contrary, they are incentivized to kill you, because then they'll still keep getting the money, but they don't have to spend it on keeping you alive. If there's any country that could be trusted with MAID, it's the United States, because it's in their interest to keep you alive. The worst possible places you could introduce it are places like Canada and the United Kingdom, where we have socialized healthcare and they are incentivized to kill you. It's not that complicated.
Yeah, although we do have some assisted suicide states in the U.S., and there are insurance companies that are offering assisted suicide instead of healthcare, and insisting that is healthcare. But the government end of it, right? You think, well, it would be better if the government was handling it, right? Well, one of the things the government does is they allow you to save your own money toward medical expenses. There's two types of accounts here in the U.S. to do it. One of them is they're both medical savings accounts. Just one of them is a flexible spending account, and the other one is a health savings account. And the health savings account just goes pretty much strictly to medical bills and specific types of like medicine expenses, if you or medical devices, if you got to buy a wheelchair, or if you have to buy a brace for your wrist or something. Flexible spending does the same thing, but only if you don't switch 1 year to another, back and forth between an HSA and an FSA at your job, which my employer did. So they didn't really explain that at the time. HR didn't do a very good job of making sure we understood that we should spend down and eliminate our FSA before the HSA kicked in. So I had like the maximum you can have at that point and roll over to the next year. And if you have any more over that, the government-sponsored bank just gets to keep it. You lose that money, which is a weird rule. I don't know why they instated that, other than the fact that it was the government's idea. So the next thing that happens, I find that out. I'm at the end of the year at that point, and I'm double what I'm supposed to have. And of course, they would not let me use it to pay any of my copays or anything, because they had this nice long list of things you can't use it for if you have an HSA. You have to use your HSA for that, and your FSA then is only good for things like your wrist brace at the pharmacy, or glasses, or a dental visit. Well, dental visits don't do jack shit for me. I didn't want to get new glasses, and I had to spend down an amount that was equal to several medical copays that we had paid. So I wanted that money, but they would not give it to me. And I couldn't get the woman to tell me why. I spent 4 or 5 hours on the phone going from person to person trying to get a solid answer. And eventually one of them said, "You have an HSA, you can't do this." And I said, "Well, is there a list of what I can spend this money on so that I can spend it down?" So she sighs, this long-suffering, "Oh my God, I can't believe you asked that" kind of sigh.
Wow.
And then takes a very, very deep breath. And she goes, "You can't spend it on," and then she starts down this list. And she gets to like item 6 or 7 before she has to take another breath. And I said, "Wait." I was like, "Don't tell me all the things that I can't spend it on. Go to the other list, the things that I can spend it on. What's left over?" She goes, "There is no other list." "Well, what can I spend it on then?" "Well, you can't spend it on da-da-da-da-da." And this conversation was repeated 4 times with her before I asked to speak to yet another supervisor.
Oh my God.
And that supervisor did exactly the same thing. And so I asked to speak to her supervisor, who did exactly the same thing. Nobody could tell me what I could spend this money on. Literally, they didn't know. They didn't have a list. They didn't think I should know.
Wow.
What I could spend my money on that I saved in my account that was part of my compensation for work that I did for my employer. And finally, I get to the last supervisor, and she threatens to there was the way that she said it was like customer servicing me out of the system. It sounded like she was offering me customer service, but what she was talking about was banning me from my money, from access to my money, for being rude by asking what I can do with my money. And I said, well, can you at least tell me what most people spend it on if they have an HSA? And she said, well, you can go to the dentist, or you can get go to the eye doctor. It'll pay for those, and you can spend it at the pharmacy. And I was like, that was the information I was looking for.
Right.
Why couldn't anybody tell me? I didn't say it because I didn't want to get customer serviced out of my money.
Yeah.
Why the hell could they not tell me that in the beginning? Because they were paid not to. That's the government handling your health care. They are paid not to. They are, shoot, I can't think of the name of they are the Bartleby the Scrivener of healthcare. Your government doesn't help you because it prefers not to. I'm sure if you look it up, it's Herman Melville, Bartleby the Scrivener. They literally will just sit like a lump. Nope, I'm not helping you. I would prefer not to. And if you're rude about it, I'll customer service you out of here, right? Like, oh, okay. When I customer serviced people, it meant they got free stuff. Back when I was in retail. But imagine what happens if you combine the beautiful nature of the health health management organization and that government organization I just described, the fuck you spending account, the inflexible spending account, right? That is what happens when you get government health care. You are now enrolled in the HMO from hell. So they offer you MAID. I was offered MAID right away, she said. That just is insane. My mom was in a lot of pain at the time that I was with her. This is Jordan Weaver, Lancaster's daughter. Recalls after she was diagnosed, she was offered MAID right away. My recollection is that she had received her diagnosis. We had been several hours in the emergency. My mom had a fractured pelvis, so she just had a broken hip. Right now, a broken hip at that age is a big deal. I'm not going to say it isn't. That is the last thing that happened to my grandmother before the first stroke that took her entire personality away. But that's not what happens to everybody. It does happen, and it is awful that it happens, but it's not a reason to kill yourself. I know my grandmother would not have accepted that. She actually was very much against assisted suicide. But can you imagine for a minute if you were an 84-year-old with just a little bit of dementia that comes with old age? Like maybe you were a little more slow on the uptake, not enough to maybe be unable to assess what's going on around you, just that it might take you 5 or 10 minutes longer than other people in a situation like this, where 10 years ago you wouldn't buy the Brooklyn Bridge from somebody, but right now, if they said, "Oh, but it's not the bridge, they're selling bricks from the under the pavement, and you get your name put on it, and it's going to go on the side of the bridge, to repair the bridge, and you'll be honored for it." A lot of 84-year-olds would figure out a couple hours later that they had just given money to a scam artist. Right? So she's in significant pain. A broken bone hurts like hell, just absolute hell. And this woman has a broken hip and a broken pelvis, really. And even a small fracture like that, a hairline fracture, it's still an insane amount of pain, which confuses you also. And here they come along. We can relieve your pain. Would you like to die? Yeah. For Elaine.
Man,
oh, go ahead.
If my mom told me something like that, I don't know what kind of angry I would be. It's like they didn't even test her for anything. Just, oh, well, do you want to die? Here, we can do that for you. We can assist you in that, but we can't actually help you.
Yep.
Oh, God.
You'll normally for a broken hip, they immobilize it for a period of time. They might do a surgery and put a plate on it to keep it immobilized. It's quite possible something like that.
Hmm.
But no, not in this situation. For Lancaster's fractured pelvis, it was impossible to offer surgery. Weaver states that there was nothing to do except wait for the bones to heal with proper treatment. So that's bed rest, because you can't be up and walking around with a broken hip. So she was in the hospital for a month. And then she was done being in the hospital. So she got out. She gets discharged out of the hospital a month later, alive. But they were going to offer her MAID for something that they could treat for a month and send her home.
You hear a lot of horror stories from, like, apparently hospitals before the basically 20th century. They didn't really treat people. They were just infirmaries where people went to die. I mean, the further back in history you go, apparently, the more this was the case. Hospitals weren't really places of healing. They were just places where people went to die.
Especially before antibiotics.
Yeah, and before Ignaz Semmelweis sort of suggested that maybe people should wash their hands and shit. And you could probably get what I'm driving at. Hospitals are now not so much places where they heal, but places where they fast track you into death. You don't have to hang around for a year. We could do you in a month. This is progress, folks.
Yep.
I shouldn't laugh. Well, all I could do is laugh, so I will.
Yeah, but it's the kind of laugh that you usually hear from somebody in a padded room and a straitjacket. Because that's about the way this is. This is a crazy situation that's being described here. And I mean, we do have people reacting to it too. I should read some of that. We have some super chows and we have some rumble rants. So we'll start with the super chows. The official reverse traditionalism channel on YouTube gave us $5 and said the thumbnail reminds me of Dr. Schaub's. Dr. Schaub's from
Wolfenstein 3D.
Yeah, because feminists are Nazis. Yes.
he was
as soon as I read that, oh my God.
He was the end of level.
Yes.
The end of episode boss on episode 2. Oh, you're my boys if you remember the original Wolfenstein. He threw syringes at you. Kind of like Fauci, but fat.
That's hilarious. No, Meredith G gave us $5 and said honey or HBR talk 409 honey for the badgers. By the way, we are not a cleaning spray, just so you know. But we will make you wish that you could use mind bleach on occasion. Dark Kikimura gave us $5 and said making assisted suicide, the first suggestion, sounds like the same informed consent problem of patients and parents being suggested circumcision as the first resort in treating phimosis rather than phimosis rings. Well, occasionally they just use a steroid. They put a steroidal cream similar to cortisone, just not the little tiny percent that you get over the counter. Richard Pierre.
It's another one of those 1% arguments.
Yeah.
Well, 1% of the time circumcisions are because of, for most, well, less than 1%, considerably less. And so we should just be able to mutilate every penis we come across for profit, or just because fuck men.
And probably 1% of the circumcisions done for phimosis are halfway necessary, and the rest are not necessary at all. Richard Bear gave us $5 and said, okay, there was a story out of Spain where a rape victim was in a group care facility, I remember this, who may have suffered additional abuse while in the facility, had applied for euthanasia. She later changed her mind, but her recanting wasn't accepted by the government. Authorities were sent to the family home to collect her and by force make her attend the euthanasia appointment, meaning they killed her, they murdered her. Part of that was because the medical system had already had recipients lined up for her organs. So they took a victim of a crime who was re-victimized in the real sense, not the feminist sense, by the people that she went to for help, who was in a moment of despondence, suicidal, and then changed her mind and decided she could live, who wasn't terminally ill, and forced her to die because they were selling her organs. Right? This is akin, he goes on, to the mental health hospital system being used as quasi-incarnation for certain people and doing an end run around the criminal justice system, or incarceration for some people. Sorry, I don't know why that looked like an end to me. Also, about the abortion in cases of incest, do you know what the population of Alabama would be without incest? That's not nice. It would likely have a lower population density per square mile than Alaska does. I would say DC would be worse. At least be minus a couple of immigrants, senators. But in the meantime, point well taken. Like, as soon as you get a system like this into place, there will be abuses, right? And one thing that absolutely has to be paramount is that it really should only be used for conditions that are not medically treatable that will cause a torturous death. There should not be allowability for its use to treat temporary or treatable conditions. Because the minute it is used to treat temporary or treatable conditions, you start getting insurance companies, governments, forcing people to go through with it or to opt into it forcibly without their consent because they don't want to pay for their treatment, or because they want to sell their organs, or because they don't want it to look like the program is not perfect and people don't want it. Right? Even a tiny little reason like that. You have to be able to change your mind. Right? If there's going to be a system that allows for people to be medically killed, those people have to be able to say, wait, I don't want to do this. Never mind. We're going to stop. And the process should stop. And there should not be anybody capable of forcing it on them against their will. If the law doesn't have stipulations that create heavy penalties, you are convicted of murder, first-degree murder, if you do this against the will of the patient, or participate in doing this against the will of the patient, even if it's just with the stroke of a pen, then it's not a good law. Anybody who signs an order to do it against the will of the patient should be convicted of first-degree murder. Anybody who administers the drug, anybody who monitors the patient while the drug is working, everybody should be able to, opt out of that order. I'm not going to participate in this. And the patient, they should have to see or hear the patient consent. And if they see or hear an objection from the patient, they are responsible to stop. Anything that's done after that. Like, this should be where consent matters. This should be where enthusiastic consent should come in. Not, two people in the back seat of a car on a date, but somebody going under the needle to die. This is where enthusiastic consent should come in. And it should involve witnesses. It should be on paper. There should be no question. If there's a question, then you don't kill that person. Right? But that's not what was going on in this case. So she was only in the hospital for a month. And then she's transferred back to UBC for rehabilitation, which it's more like a nursing home situation at that point. Recuperating to the point where she could be sent home. It had to be supervised by a team of doctors, nurses, and occupational and physical therapists, Weaver stated. She couldn't come home, so it was very expensive to treat, but it didn't require surgery. And as you know from the story, she made a full recovery. Hell, she traveled outside the country. Traveled far. It's crazy to consider that they were going to kill this woman. A full recovery indeed, as afterwards Lancaster was healthy enough to go on multiple trips, not someone suffering from an irredeemable and grievous medical condition. And I missed us. This was Roboto 1234567 gave us $1 and said, at this point, it would seem you could have lawsuit them to Afghanistan, a class action lawsuit, as you're not the first they did that to, is my guess. Yeah, probably. You're probably talking about the the flexible spending account people, right? And I'm sure that I'm not the only person they've done that to. They not give information. What I did end up doing is ensuring that some people in higher up positions knew they were doing that. But I really didn't ask for any kind of, recompense for myself, because I got my money in the end. I was able to spend it, and so they did not take my money, but they sure did try. A full recovery indeed, as afterwards Lancaster was healthy enough to go on multiple trips, not someone suffering from an irredeemable and grievous medical condition. However, Weaver worries if she hadn't been at that first consultation when her mom was first in the hospital, things may have gone differently. It was something like, MAID is an option that would end the pain forever, with a sort of encouraging attitude, Weaver recalled from the interaction with the doctor who offered MAID. So the first thing, she goes in there and her hip is sore. She gets diagnosed with a hairline fracture, and the doctor's like, if you just kill yourself, it won't hurt anymore. Like, that was her treatment plan.
Translated, if we just kill you. I just want to keep hammering that point home. It's not suicide. This is murderous doctors.
If you just let us kill you, the pain will be over.
Unless you believe in ghosts or the afterlife, in which case your soul will be floating around the world in extreme agony for the rest of eternity. Luckily, we don't have those kind of exclusions in our insurance policies.
Yeah, of course not. So, if someone was being respectful of healthcare workers, they might almost go along with it. And that's another thing, right? So this woman's in her 80s. She is a boomer. The reason that circumcision in the United States became as common as it got is because prior to Gen X, the boomer generation and their parents, if a doctor said, this is healthy and you should do it, they believed it so gullibly, I can't think of a nicer way to say this, that there used to be advertisements. 4 out of 5 doctors recommend whatever it is they're recommending. Like, even, I think it was Camel cigarettes. 4 out of 5 doctors say that Camel cigarettes taste the best. And it's in an old Abbott and Costello cassette tape I have somewhere. It's the one that has Who's on First. And I can even remember the stupid ad because it had a little song, a little jingle. CAMELS. Like, it was made to be cute, right? Cancer sticks. Here's your cancer sticks.
The Flintstones
4 out of 5.
used to have
Oh, yeah.
cigarettes in the middle of that, and the
And
fucking
beer.
Muppets and stuff. It'd
Beer
just be
too.
like adverts.
Yep.
Like much like we have adverts these days, like in the middle of a video, when your illustrious host will suddenly start talking about fucking ground news or some shit. Yeah, the same thing happened in the 60s in the fucking Flintstones.
Yeah. Some of the ads from back then were funny too, but that was just out there. And this in particular, like if they said 4 out of 5 doctors, people would listen even when all the doctors were saying was these cigarettes taste better than other cigarettes. Not that they're better for your health or not as bad for your health. Doctors smoke our cigarettes. Oh, really? Okay, well, I'll smoke those because they won't kill me, right?
Experts agree.
Yeah.
On what tastes better.
Yeah. Experts about taste. And then, of course, when doctors said, you gotta get your kid circumcised because his body is imperfect and he'll be unclean his whole life if you don't cut off some of the skin on his genitalia where he's going to be exposed to urine and feces at the beginning of his life. That's the healthiest thing you can do for him, is make sure that the skin barrier that usually stops germs from getting into his bloodstream isn't there. Right? Create an open wound that's going to have whatever bandaging is on it get saturated with urine and feces. That's going to be totally healthy, guys. And they bought it. They believed it. Oh, yes, we must do this. This is a good idea. So, Gen Xers, I think about 3/4 of our generation, maybe more, maybe closer to 90%, were cut. The men in our generation. I don't think we did that to as many of our kids. Like, most of the parents that I know, we all kind of ended up having the same discussion, and we're like, we don't have to do this right now. Like, he can decide that when he's old enough to make it his choice. That's his choice. We don't have to do this. But I know that they're still doing it and they're still making money off of it. And at one point in Florida, a judge ordered a mother to consent to it because the court decided that it was healthy on the basis of something some doctor said. But not all doctors agree on that. Roboto123456 gave us $1 and said, would you trust a doctor who didn't smoke cigarettes back in the day on what brand tastes the best? Sure. I don't know. I think back in the day, if I had trusted that I could smoke cigarettes because doctors smoked them, I wouldn't have made it to 21. I don't think I'd have survived. Dark Kikimura gave us $5 and said, on universal medicine in America, the actual answer is that we do have it. It's just local instead of federal, such as New York City's 100-year-old system. I prefer the comparison you can make between parts of America with government involvement in healthcare versus parts without. And healthcare is better and cheaper in those parts without. That's a more that apples to apples comparison than comparing one pretend free market system of America to and all other free market health countries that happen to be third world shitholes against like 24 of the richest countries in Europe with use of universal care. One thing I will say, even the government is not alone in this. Insurance companies are not necessarily the best thing either. Because I was basically self-pay with my doctor, and because I was able to go to an independent pharmacy when I had COVID, that was a composition pharmacy. I think that's what it's called, composite pharmacy or something like that. They put the medicine together in the pharmacy. They put the pills, the medicine into the capsule in the pharmacy. I was able to get ivermectin. Right? But if you went to, say, one of the big national chains with a prescription for that, they would report your doctor, and your doctor would get contacted by the state organization that is an authority over pharmacies and an authority over doctors, and they would ask him a bunch of questions. My doctor actually had said, is it illegal to prescribe ivermectin? Am I not allowed to prescribe this to my patients? And they had to admit that, no, it's not illegal. It's not against policy. There's no, he's not in trouble. They just had some questions. And they did this to him like 5 times before he was like, all right, I'm going to give you this prescription, but you have to go to pharmacy X, because if you go to pharmacy Y, this is what happens to me. So, when you get the government involved, when you get the insurance companies involved, insurance companies won't cover that stuff. I had to pay for it out of pocket, but because it was a cheap drug, that wasn't a big deal. And it did work. It worked very well. I wish they were giving that to everybody during the COVID crisis. I think that the death toll would have been significantly smaller. Roboto 1234567 gave us $1 and said, "Does ivermectin work?" It does, for the purposes that it's made to treat, and the things that there's several things that have been discovered that it works on. They were using it to treat coronaviruses before COVID. In fact, they were using it for pets for the same reason. You get a coronavirus, they give you ivermectin. But that particular coronavirus, they didn't want to do that because they wanted people to take the vaccine, the non-vaccine vaccine, the DNA shot, or whatever it's called, mRNA, LMNOP. Anyway, the garbage shot. So this woman says, "I think my mom's pretty feisty, but if I hadn't been there, the doctor might have been able to manipulate. It was off the cuff. It was manipulative. The suggestion of MAID by healthcare workers, like in Lancaster's case, is something would be made illegal by the Alberta government if the new proposed Bill 18 were passed. So it's not illegal. It's just not policy. They're not supposed to be doing it, but they're not verboten from doing it. In other words, if they want to suggest it, they can. It's just not their job. They don't have to do that. The bill, amongst other things, would ban healthcare providers from initiating conversations on MAID. So this is partly why I brought this whole subject up. Every country that passes a bill like this, that needs to be written into the initial bill. It shouldn't be something you slap on later on after somebody does some shit like this. It should always be, you can't bring this up. You can't initiate this conversation. The patient has to do it.
Yeah, if they want to die, then you have the conversation. If you want them to die, that's, again, murder, isn't it?
Yeah. That alone would prevent insurance companies from saying, we won't cover your treatment, but we'll cover your death. We'll cover, the hospital killing you. If they can't initiate that conversation, if they can't suggest as an alternative to covering your treatment, that you just die instead, then it would prevent them from trying to pressure people, and it would make it much less likely for them to deny care for people who have treatable conditions. Why isn't it let me scroll up? Xeranx gave us $5 in a super chat and said, conspiracy theory, they focused on C19 and allowed normal flu cases to go unchecked, and that's why the death toll was higher. Possibly. There were some other things that happened that can also contribute to that. For instance, when I was talking to the director of the funeral home that took care of my dad's final arrangements, one of the stories that he told was that he received a death certificate for a man who died in a motorcycle accident. The accident was the indisputable cause of the death. It was gruesome and brutal, and he wasn't explaining any further than that, but it's a motorcycle, so you can probably imagine. But the death certificate attributed the death to COVID. This was a person that had my dad as a school teacher. I met this guy when I was a little kid, and he was like a high school kid. And working with my dad on my dad's yearbook staff when dad was a yearbook advisor. So like, this is somebody I know who personally witnessed this, and is a trustworthy individual who would not just make up a story like that. And I just couldn't imagine, like, what the hell was that? If they're doing that, then they're getting every cause of pneumonia that passed away. And when you look at the death tolls from pneumonia and influenza during that time span, there are far fewer deaths from both of those illnesses, right? And because they were counting everything as a COVID death, they basically overlooked a significant number of influenza and pneumonia deaths. Like that was a documented fact. And there have been doctors discussing that on YouTube. I know at least one of them got a strike for it. But yeah.
Everyone who died with a positive everyone who died and was tested positive for COVID was listed as a COVID death.
Yep.
Except George Floyd. An exception was made for George Floyd, who died with a positive test for COVID. It's the weirdest thing, isn't it?
Yep. And that's very bizarre.
No one's even arguing about that. We're arguing about whether he died from a knee to the neck or he died from the 4 times the lethal dose of fentanyl.
Yeah.
Because they're the two most likely options. The least likely option is that he died from COVID, even though he tested positive for COVID at his death.
Yep.
That just sort of goes to show you that everyone was just playing fast and loose with these diagnoses of COVID deaths, largely because the tests were done with just this bullshit that people would pass out, with the swabs and whatnot.
Yep.
Cast your mind back to 2020 and 2021, when everyone was constantly sticking plastic sticks into their noses and going, "Oh, thank God I don't have COVID," or "Oh shit, I do have COVID," and we're just assuming that those tests were legitimate, despite all kinds of things. I did one of those once because I tried to come to America in 2022 or whatever it was, and I had to get a COVID test in order to even attempt it. Turns out I wasn't even able to. But yeah, they had these little clinics set up all across the world where they would stick a piece of plastic in your nose and then go, "Hooray! You don't have COVID." But they also warned you that if you've drank coffee recently or eaten anything that's high in vitamin C or high in some kind of citric acid of some sort. Yeah, it turns out there's all kinds of ways that these tests can be corrupted based on what you've eaten or what you've drunk.
Oh, that's great. So you could get a false negative or a false positive.
All the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're still led to believe that millions of people died because they tested positive for COVID.
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it? It's a bit weird.
Yep. But in any case, when you mix a system corrupt enough to pull shit like that with another system corrupt enough to let people die for money and then sell their organs, you get the corrupt system from hell. Right? So you can't have a law that allows a person to kill another person without every fail-safe you can possibly imagine to specifically limit it to the one circumstance under which people have been persuaded to accept that this is an okay thing to do, right? So otherwise you end up in this situation with this Miss Lancaster, who was offered death as the primary treatment for a highly treatable condition from which she recovered well enough to resume being a world traveler. Zirank sent us a member chat on our YouTube channel. Member for 22 months, level spore message. Also, The Dead Zone starring Anthony Michael Hall had an episode of, there were a bunch of coincidences like that. An episode on a pandemic where they utilized hydroxychloroquine as a treatment. He just said HCQ, but I'm pretty sure that's what he meant. I think that was pre-2010. Yeah, that was a while ago. It was an interesting series. But yeah, let's see what else we got here. Oh, and J.O. Balls 3547 says compounding pharmacy. So that's what I always want to say combining because they combine the meds, but it's compounding pharmacy. It's essentially they manufacture some medications there instead of ordering them already put together. So the bill, among other things, would ban healthcare providers from initiating conversations on MAID. When asked about this provision in the bill, this is what Lancaster and Weaver had to say. I think that's great. I hand it to the officials in Alberta for presenting this. This is a perfectly reasonable safeguard to avoid predatory doctors manipulating, consciously or unconsciously, patients when they're vulnerable. So here's why I don't hand it to them, right? I am pretty sure that they voted for that bill, the original bill, the MAID bill, when it passed. Without that provision in it, nobody probably brought it up, or if somebody did, they got talked out of it and did not have it in the original law. Why the hell not? They will police what you can eat. They will police what medicines you can take. They will police you out of being able to take safe medicines. We saw that during the COVID crisis. But they'll even police what you can say in Canada, right? But they don't want to prevent predatory arrangements from taking place in the hospital. They don't think it's necessary to ensure that if a doctor happens to be a little unscrupulous, maybe not fully respectable, not fully trustworthy, that there's a safeguard to protect the patient from getting killed. You can't have ivermectin, but your doctor can suggest that you should die for having a broken hip. Perfectly reasonable safeguard. Yep. I respect everyone's views, added Weaver. Maybe it isn't for us, for our family. Maybe it is for someone else's. I don't judge, but I do not think it should be offered to healthy people who have still got a zest for life and who haven't mentioned it themselves. It's completely inappropriate, and it's distressing to the patient. Yeah, when somebody looks at you and goes, "You want to die?" It's kind of distressing. To advise MAID right away, prior to any other forms of treatment being offered, creates distrust in the healthcare system and professionals who work within it. It creates distrust, you think? Like, I could think of 50 reasons why this is a bad thing that come before creating distrust. The top one being, this is murder. This is attempted murder. People who could be just fine 2 months later might be killed instead. Imagine what this might do to families. Imagine how predators might use this, especially if there is a pretty big market for human organ donation.
I mean, imagine going to a hospital saying, "Can you please save my life?" And they say, "What best I could do is end your life."
Yeah.
Imagine if you have police and you get assaulted in the street by some vagrants, and the police slam you against a wall and arrest you on account of having been assaulted by those vagrants. Oh yeah, that's also happening.
Yep.
At least in the UK. Imagine if you went to the government that is supposed to put the people of that country first, and they put the people of that country last. I mean, imagine such a thing. Why would such a thing ever occur? It would never occur. Don't worry, it's not happening.
If the bar is moved from, we'll do this for people who are going to be guaranteed otherwise a long torturous death from some illness that's going to slowly rot their system or break down their bones or drown them or otherwise just torture them to death. And the bar has been moved to not just treatable conditions, but a minor fracture, a fracture that you could get treated, and so the bone will heal, and you can get it treated well enough that you can go places and do things afterward that you have to be pretty healthy to be able to go and do them. Right? That's the equivalent there. It is. Are they going to do this if a 30-year-old breaks a bone? What if you have lifelong profound depression? Oh, they are already killing depression patients in Canada now. Depression patients in Canada are dying now by MAID. Right? The rape victim in Spain, that could happen in Canada. And the problem with that isn't what crime she suffered. The problem is the lack of help, the lack of recovery, and then the lack of ability to take it back when she realized that she didn't want to die because some other people might want her organs. Can you imagine the nightmares? You know, there's this phenomenon of people who receive organs, where they exhibit personality traits, or they have dreams that turn out to be parts of the life story of the person whose organ that they received, without having the knowledge for that to have manifested. And it's been documented in multiple cases. Very odd. There's not really been a solid explanation given for why that happens. But I can think of a great horror story plot where somebody gets an organ like that and they're plagued for the rest of their life with nightmares about this girl being executed by the medical system so that they could harvest her organs and sell them like that. You know, that'd be like the telltale heart, but instead of it being under the floorboards, it's in your chest. Pretty fucked up. And I can't imagine being trapped in the nightmare of these people are going to kill me and there's nothing I can do about it because the state is behind it and I didn't even do anything wrong. I was the victim. That must have been absolutely horrifying. Like, I don't think people would buy a horror story like that because it would upset them so much. But this was real. This was somebody's real life, because there are not safeguards to stop that from happening in the law in Spain. And there are not safeguards to stop this shit from happening in Canada unless that law passed. If a doctor is advising MAID, you think, my goodness, this person who is supposed to have my best interests at heart, because this is what I should be doing, states Weaver. It leaves you very shaken. You don't need that kind of uncertainty when you're already unwell. If people want to request MAID, it's not our choice. We can respect that. But doctors must not offer it. It is just wrong. To boot, Lancaster has continued to maintain her health and is traveling, having previously gone to Cuba, Mexico, and Guatemala, not the activities of an ill individual. She's now planning on going to Seattle by the end of the month. I was just going to say, Guatemala, is a place you want to be careful in, although I don't know if it's as bad as it was when my grandparents went there as missionaries. But they had to be super careful when they were there. This woman is going to Seattle.
That's way worse than Guatemala.
Like, okay, Guatemala's not so bad. She climbed a volcano in Guatemala, but in Seattle, she's going to run into woke ideologues that are rioting in the streets, taking people's pets out of their houses and killing them.
Yeah, in Guatemala, you'll approach mobsters who will take you as a hostage and demand money for your release. If you go to Seattle, they'll just fucking kill you.
Yeah.
They won't even think twice about it. They'll just be like, who the fuck is this white bitch? Kill her.
Yeah.
Steal her shit.
When we were in Mexico, she was taking cooking classes and making her own tacos, it says.
Hello.
Hello. We do have a Richard.
Hey. It's 29 degrees here now. At night.
So, I'm Yank. I'm ignorant of what 29 degrees feels like in the UK, but in the US, it's fucking freezing. That's 32 degrees is the temperature at which water freezes in the US, because we go by Fahrenheit. Now I have to look this up. I feel bad. I should know this. I've looked this up often enough because some dipshit accidentally reset or recalibrated the digital thermometer that I use at work. But okay, so it's the equivalent of about 84.2 degrees here, but which is pretty warm if there's humidity, that makes it excruciatingly warm.
Yeah.
I should probably not tell you that we had temperatures up in the high 90s and low hundreds over here.
Also, they cut in social care as well in the UK, and and they're pitting people who are on disability benefits against the British public. So they're planning stories about people on disability taking advantage of the system, which is very rare in itself.
It's probably not easy to get disability in the UK, is it?
No, because people think it's easy to get disability in the UK, and it's not.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, the reason that these kinds of things are a men's issue, though, there's two things. So first of all of these types of things are funded from some sort of taxation. They might call it something different, but it's still a tax. It's the government taking money, skimming off of your paycheck, if you get a paycheck, to pay for this system that redistributes some of it after the government takes its cut. And
you still get taxed. And you still get taxed on your benefits as well.
Yep. Then they tax it again. They take some of it back. That's crazy.
Because the British public think you don't get taxed on your benefits, but you do. So,
yeah.
And I stand by my slur against the British public.
Which is, are you allowed to say it?
They're retarded on every subject, especially when it comes to benefits.
That's fair. You are allowed to say it. But yep, in any case, yeah, it's a men's issue for that reason alone, but it's also a men's issue because that's also the retirement system, right?
Yeah. So pension is classed as a benefit as well, even though pensioners don't really believe it's a benefit, but pension is a benefit.
It's a benefit, right?
Yeah.
It's paid for out of that. And of course,
so on Twitter, I've been dealing with Reddit fans, and I've been dealing with people who don't like me because I claim benefit.
Yeah. So of course, if it's a retirement type benefit, like pension is retirement, what is the average British lifespan by sex? We'll look at this. So the average lifespan is from birth it's 79.1 years for males and 83.0 years for females. So females live an average of about 3 years longer than males right now. There have been points in history where females lived 5 or more years longer. They look at boys and girls born in 2023, and the projection is 86.7 years for boys and 90 years for girls. So they're expecting the gap to increase again. And this has been a fairly common thing throughout, at least, more recently recorded history, that death gap where on average women outlive men by between 4 and 10 years, depending on what country and what life circumstances, whether they're poor or whether they're upper class and things like that. But people who would live on a pension are at the lower income level, right? Because otherwise they would have their own money. They wouldn't rely on a pension from the state. And they've probably worked hard for what they did have. And more likely than not, the death gap is a little wider for them than, say, the upper classes. So very often you see men not getting to enjoy their pension benefits because they retire and then they have a heart attack and die. Or they do, but not for as long as the wife does.
That's what happens in the black community as well. So the males may reach pension age, but like you said, they might not get to enjoy it.
Right. And then if we see this law passed, it makes it even worse because a lot of times what you have is if a thing like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, dementia causing disorder is going to hit. It'll hit at a younger age in men because they have lived harder than women. If they're going to have physical disability from a heart attack, for instance, if your heart attack leaves you with lower function in your heart after you survive it. My dad had, for the last 10 years of his life, his heart was operating at about 25% efficiency, which is incredibly low for a survivor. And it was very difficult for him to use his legs because you require a good blood flow for the muscles in your legs to get enough energy, enough oxygen and nutrients to operate. And so it doesn't just weaken the muscles, it also just keeps them from doing what they could do, regardless of their size and strength. And you have two types of wife, right? You have the wife who adores her husband until he's gone, and maybe even after, and would just move heaven and earth for him. And then you have most women. And most women will move their husband into a nursing home, or they will move with him into a nursing home, maybe. But he's definitely going to be in a nursing home under that circumstance because they won't be able to manage and they won't try. They'll want to leave the difficult parts of his care to somebody else. And it's just a bit of realism for you. You know, if at that age, you go through what my dad went through, when you didn't marry someone like my mom, you can say goodbye to your home. I can hear myself from somebody.
Shit, sorry.
Oh, it's you, Mike. I can see it. It's okay. But you know, my dad lived in his own home until after mom passed away, and his last 6 months was between hospitals trying to treat something that ultimately contributed to his death. But a nursing home was never his home. He never lived in a nursing home. Mom would never have allowed that. And we weren't going to do that. We were gonna figure something out. We had a whole plan in place and everything to bring him home, and his body just couldn't. There were just too many things going on. But a lot of women in that situation would say, "I just can't deal with this. This is the situation. You're going to have to go in a home. We're going to sell the house and pay the nursing home, and this is where we're going to live until we die." And think they're making a good decision, right? Guess where your pension goes if you live in a nursing home? Right? They get it first. If you have any money left over, you get an allowance. You don't get to go travel with it.
That's what happened to my mum.
Yep.
They took a state pension and a private pension.
Yep, they take everything. And I mean, if somebody doesn't have other people to take care of them, then that's the only option you got. But if there's, you know, if somebody's in a health condition where they have to have a nurse on call 24/7, that may be the only option you've got, right? But if somebody's in a situation like my dad was, he just needed to have somebody in the house to make sure he was okay.
We did have that. We did have that for like a year, but
Yeah.
she got too violent for it to continue. So.
Yeah, sometimes dementia goes one way, and like my grandmother was just pretty quiet when she had dementia, but sometimes I've worked with violent dementia patients. I had one guy everybody warned me about, and they had stories of him throwing his bed across the room, and we're all like, he can't pick up the hospital bed. That's not possible. That thing has to weigh, like a couple 100 pounds. There's no way.
Dementia strength is will.
Yep. And it is. I actually came in there immediately after he had done it once.
Mom kicked me in my stomach. So Mom kicked me in my stomach. I ran across the room.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
And then she punched me more. Then she punched me in my chest.
That is dangerous.
And bit me a couple of times.
Ow. Yeah. I've been bitten by dementia patients too. That's the other thing. Human beings, we can be animalistic when we're scared. And if you don't know what's going on around you, you can hurt people. So there are situations where a nursing home is inevitable, but there are a lot of situations where women will put a husband in a nursing home when it's not inevitable. You only live in hospice if you're dying. You don't live in hospice if you're going to be in a plateau of bad health for 10 years.
And
but
she's super skinny now as well. So
yeah, that happens also in nursing homes a lot because besides the fact that the food's not good, if you need assistance when eating, you only get a short span of time to eat. But that is our news story for the day. Whoa, I guess there's more. You can see her on vacation. That is a humongous drink. It's probably not that big. It's just closer to the camera. And I guess that's the volcano she climbed. She's recovered enough to is that a burro or a horse? Or a pony, maybe. That's a pony.
oh, a pony. Okay, I was gonna say donkey.
Donkey. Maybe a donkey. It's small on my screen, but she said, and when we were in Havana, she is a retired piano teacher. She played with a 5-piece jazz ensemble after recovering from the pelvic fracture that they offered her MAID to treat. Miriam's living life to the full, stated Weaver. My recovery has been amazing, and there was no need for MAID to ever or even have been suggested, stated Miriam. They put all the tags on this one. But this is exactly what I'm talking about, though. Anytime that you have a law in place, that allows a person to do to another person something that under other circumstances would be considered a violation of human rights, right? Say to kill them, to imprison them, to confiscate their property, to override their choice on what to do with their physical body, not their baby, but their physical body, to practice their religious beliefs or not practice any religious beliefs, right? To be able to speak in their native language, anything like that. If you're giving somebody the right to override that, to take away a person's ability to live or be free or anything like that, maintain property that they have earned and built up, it's something that should have every fail-safe known to man on it. If you got a circumstance where people are accepting, okay, under this circumstance, it's justified. We should be allowed to do it under just this circumstance. If you don't do that, you get abuses. In the U.S., eminent domain was created, for instance, for the purpose of allowing roads to be built and military to move through the country. And it wasn't made so that private companies could confiscate people's private property and use it for their own purposes without compensating them for it fairly. But that's how it's being used. And it's being used now with it's been used in the past with big businesses that wanted to put corporate headquarters up or factories or store outlets, anything like that. Zoning laws changing, so grandma and grandpa own a house. When they pass away and mom and dad inherit it, they can't live there because it's now been rezoned as a business. So if they don't want to put a business in it, they have to sell it. And it doesn't matter if the market's 10 times worse than it was when grandma and grandpa paid for it, and they're actually going to get less money. Right? And if some business wants it, you can't turn them down. That's the way it's these types of laws, these types of government abuses are being used in that manner now. And today, eminent domain in particular is being used to take away people's property for data centers. They're making people move out of their homes and maybe be able to get a new home, maybe not, maybe get fair compensation, maybe not. Maybe it's not fair in their mind. Maybe it's their family homestead going back, 4 or 5 generations. But then they have to vacate. They have to move out so that data can live there. Something that is not even physical can live there. Not in the same sense that we're physical anyway. Roboto123456 gave us $2 and said, if this is the case, can be offered to Congress to all the out of touch or barely alive politicians first. Yeah, let Congress have MAID. I don't know, but I do know this. I don't want a law like this to happen in my state. I don't like that there are other states in my country that have laws like this. And if we have to have a law like this, like I do understand why this type of law gets passed. I think that every way of corrupting it should be anticipated and headed off with stipulations. You can't do this, you can't do that. You must do this, you must do that. In order to prevent things like insurance companies saying, well, we won't pay for your health care, but we'll pay for you to be killed by the hospital. Or doctors saying, oh, you have a cut that needs stitches. Well, how about if we just kill you instead? Is that okay? It won't hurt anymore. You won't have to get a shot. Right? We want to not have people who are in a moment of weakness, too sad to contemplate their future, thinking that they can take it back, and then finding out later that nope, they can't. Right? They have to have these fail safes that you can change your mind, and that you can be freed from having this imposed on you, by the fact that they can't mention it. The insurance company can't deny care and offer this instead, and you can't be pressured into it. And I think even if you were not an organ donor before the MAID conversation, you shouldn't be able to become one after you sign up for MAID, because that would keep them from taking people's organs, killing people to take their organs. And there's already been some instances where that's come out too. Hospitals letting people who were organ donors die because they wanted their organs. So, I don't know. Has anybody else got anything to add to that?
The advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based on my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
It's coming to the UK, it's coming to the UK anyway. So
yeah, that's what got this started. Actually, it was you sending me that information that it was going to be voted on again soon. And
plus with the recent cuts to social care and the public turning on disabled people.
Yeah, and in the previous article we read, I want to remind everybody, in fact, I can open it up, I think. Yeah, all the way at the bottom here. Yeah. It was up here. The vast majority of disabled people and their organizations oppose it, she said. They need the health and social care system fixing first. They want us as parliamentarians to assist them to live, not die. That's an important aspect of the discussion.
The British public think that young people can't be disabled.
Oh gosh. I can tell everybody. Yeah. In my class when I was growing up, first 4 years I went to school, kindergarten, first, second, third grade, I went to a school that was tiny and didn't have this young man going to school there. But from fourth grade on, I knew this kid, Doug, who had muscular dystrophy. And it was very degenerative. It started hitting him in the second grade, and by the time I met him, he had an electric wheelchair. And I only got to know him for a few years. But the kids that went to the school that I transferred to when my school shut down, they got to know him for the whole time they were in school up to the 7th grade. So 8 years. And a lot of kids, like everybody's heart broke when we lost Doug. He was an unbelievably fascinating young man who he really was tough, and came to school in circumstances where he could have just said, I want to stay at home and play all day. Right? But he didn't do that. He did normal kid things. And even to the point of finding ways to participate in gym class, even when he couldn't run and throw things like dodgeball. He played dodgeball with us. We just had special rules. His handlebars threw the ball. If it hit the handlebar, and he could aim it, right? He could whip that thing around with his little joystick on the arm of the wheelchair. But and of course you couldn't beat him because it wasn't the same as beating somebody else. His muscles were flaccid. He would get bruises that the rest of us wouldn't get. So it gave us a challenge. He had the opportunity to use that handlebar as a bat and it gets you back. So he could get people out and he could dodge. So it was fair. And we played like that, in gym class and out at recess and everything. Kid was smart as a whip, but he was absolutely handicapped. He had one hand that worked properly. He had no use really of his legs, and his other hand had a lot more difficulty. Just like everybody else has a good hand and a bad hand, he had a bad hand and a worse hand. And the last week before he went into the hospital for the last time, he was so weak that his aide, his DSP, had to help him hold his hand up in class. But he took homework with him when he went to the hospital. He thought he was going to come back. And he was in the hospital for about a week before we lost him. The whole class went to his funeral. And he was handicapped from the time he was about 8 years old till the time he was about 13 years old. And then he passed away. So the idea that kids can't be handicapped is absolute bullshit. Right? And obviously, being handicapped isn't something that he did on purpose. That was a genetic condition. Some of the people that I've worked with are handicapped because the doctor did something wrong and they were injured at birth. They had a lack of oxygen, or they had physical damage from impact or other types of things that can pressures on the body and things like that. Something that shouldn't get cut, getting cut. Introduction of bacteria. And then some people have genetic conditions that can be disabling. And there are some genetic conditions that the child can survive for the first 3 or 4 days before they die. The idea that you can't become disabled until you have an injury is, anybody that thinks that is beyond stupid. There isn't.
That's all of the British public.
Yeah, that to believe that you have to bury your head in the sand.
Again, that's the British media.
I wonder what they think of the Christmas story, the Christmas Carol. Like, was that kid disabled? Was Tiny Tim disabled? Does he count? I wonder where do they think that Dickens got the idea for that character. Like, maybe people who are campaigning for the public to better understand disabilities in the UK ought to start using Tiny Tim as a mascot for disabled children.
The attacks on disabled people in public have gone up again.
And see, that's another one.
Tiny Tim is British, and therefore he cannot be disabled. we have defined disabled along racial and sexual lines, and thereby Tiny Tim is a straight white male, so fuck him. God bless us, no one.
When you say attacks on disabled people, do you mean just, 50-50 genderless, or is this happening more to guys?
It's happening more to guys than it is to women.
I kind of figured, because it's a lot harder for people to attack women in public places.
If you're learning disabled and it's more prevalent, they will attack you. If you're on a wheelchair or use a walking stick, they will attack you and say, why are you claiming benefits and stuff like that.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Not everybody that uses or that has a disability uses benefits. There's many, many people who have to, but sometimes, once in a blue moon, you run across somebody disabled whose family has the money to provide care for them without using benefits, and they do. But as far as this type of disability is concerned, and the type that affects you in childhood, birth injuries can happen to anybody. It's not necessarily a thing that happens more to one gender than the other. Although circumcision-related birth injuries pretty much only happen to girls, but genetic conditions. Go ahead.
Mine is like an oxygen.
Yeah.
I was wrapped around the umbilical cord for too long.
And see, that can happen to both boys and girls, but genetic conditions, those usually hit boys more than they hit girls because there are more of them that sit on the X chromosome than there are that sit on the Y chromosome. And if a baby has two X chromosomes, they have a 50-50 chance of getting at least one that doesn't have a disability that's existing on the other. So if it's a sex-linked disability and it sits on the X chromosome, girls are not going to be the ones hit with it. It's going to be people who only get one X, and that'll be boys. For girls to be hit with it, like two people with the same genetic condition would have to... That's why they always say usually girls aren't hemophiliacs, because it's sex-linked, and usually girls aren't hemophiliacs unless there's been incest. But with such a large population, it's actually possible for two X chromosome hemophilia carriers to get together and have a girl, and it's not incest, and they could still be a hemophiliac. But with a lot of conditions, like the condition I have, people wouldn't look at me and say, "Oh, you're disabled," right? But while most people, if they get whiplash, they'll be down for maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks. It took me out for 8 months one time because my body wouldn't heal. I have a connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And it's you can't see it. I have this weird thing that happens when I get up from sitting still for a long time. I can't stand straight up. It hurts, and then sometimes I can't walk. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. You have to warm up, right? You stand, and then you have to slowly
sit back down, and try to get ready. Yeah,
work out the kinks.
Queen Victoria was a hemophiliac, by the way, which is genetically impossible unless there's an enormous amount of fraud in the royal family.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Just saying. But yeah, well, and you can be a bleeder without being a hemophiliac too. Because hemophilia is a particular genetic condition. But for instance, if I get a deep cut, it's harder for me to stop bleeding because the connective tissue disorder. There's different types. There's like 13 different types of EDS, and I have the one that affects the blood vessels, which is very dangerous. It can cause strokes and brain bleeds, hemorrhage. It causes joint bleeds and all kinds of. So I used to be incredibly stretchy when I was a kid, and now I'm incredibly stiff. And it's not gonna get better, right? But there are kids that have it that, like I was very stretchy, but not catastrophically so. But there are kids that can't walk across the room without putting their hip out because they have it so bad. And they don't look like, if you just look at them standing there, they don't look disabled until something like that happens. Disability is broad. And it does affect boys more than girls in a few different ways.
Also, the British public think if you're on a wheelchair that you can't stand up or walk.
I take care of lots of people that need a wheelchair most of the time, but they can stand up and walk sometimes.
Because the British public are stupid.
Some people can walk anywhere they want to go, and then some people can't walk on uneven ground, or maybe they can't walk more than 200 feet. Some people can't walk without somebody holding onto a gait belt. So that's a gait belt it's a couple inches wide, maybe an inch and a half, and wraps around your midsection so that somebody else can hold onto it and help you keep your balance, keep you from falling down. And sometimes people have mobility issues that at the age of 10 or 11 years old, the diagnosis is a disability like cerebral palsy, but they are able to walk and maybe even run at that age. But as they get older, the condition becomes degenerative because it makes everything that an individual does harder than it is for anybody else to do it. And if you don't keep up an exercise regimen and make yourself work super hard to maintain your mobility, you lose it quickly. And even if you do maintain an exercise regimen to try to maintain your mobility, you'll still lose it slowly. You lose it faster than other people lose theirs as they're aging.
That's what's happening to me.
Yep. And me. And it's just happening to you faster than it's happening to me. And this is the reality for people with disabilities. And very often there's two things that change the way people think about disabled guys. One of them is guys have more of a tendency to try to be independent. My friend Derek from high school was in the journalism club with me, and he was on the school newspaper and on the school yearbook, and he was a photographer. It helped a lot. He had cerebral palsy. It helped a lot that autofocus cameras were a thing. They were new for us. Like there were autofocus, like the instant kind of cameras, the point and shoot cameras. But for a single lens reflex to have autofocus lenses and everything, like the heavy professionals had them, but the consumer usually couldn't get them. Well, in the 90s, that became a thing, and in the late 80s, early 90s. So the photo club got some, and Derek joined the photo club. When he was in junior high, my dad told the story that I told a while back on here about the young man that he coached in track that had been injured in a car accident and almost lost his leg, and how hard it was for him to recover and how badly he wanted to join the track team anyway. Like it took me so many tries doing that story too, because it made me cry every time I read it. But Derek heard that story and he joined the track team. He threw the shot put and the discus, and despite having less control over his limbs than the other kids did, he was above average, which was quite an accomplishment for someone with cerebral palsy. And so, like, guys do that. They try, they strive, they don't want to accept not being able to do things. They got to try, right? Whereas girls, their instinct is to ask for help. And it's not always that way. I had a teacher, Miss Thompson, in junior high school who had polio when she was 10, and she was in about the same boat as Doug. She had an electric wheelchair. She had pretty good use of one hand and not as good use of the other, no use of her legs. And she handled, as a teacher, the worst age group of kids outside of kindergarten, 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds. And in one of the classes that they treat as the most boring, right, English and reading, and she kept discipline in her class. She commanded the respect of the kids, and she did a great job. She was a terrific teacher. But not everybody can do that, right? Not everybody can overcome things like that. I mean, when you see it happen, it's more often guys, and a lot of times the system isn't very forgiving. You try to not be disabled. When you're disabled, the system decides that you must be right, and they'll take it away from you. So you don't have a safety net to fall back on if you fail. And people will look at you and say, well, look how hard he's trying. He must be able to do something, right? And sometimes it's true. I just met a minister who's in a wheelchair that has to have an interpreter to talk because he doesn't have a working voice box. He can't see, can't really hear, and he's working. But it's you have to be able to have the right to fail if you're disabled. More people, I think, would try if they could do that, especially more men. And you might have more succeeding if they had that safety net. But unfortunately, with the British press making people angry at the disabled, instead of the politicians who are wasting everybody's money and bringing in immigrants that are making things a living hell for some of the people in the country and otherwise just fucking things up generally, they're blaming people who can't even control what's happening to them. That's pretty bad. And they can only get away with it because these people often don't have a voice for themselves.
They also blame the disabled people for the 2007 crash as well.
You know,
What a financial crash that happened in 2007.
You have to be a pretty big part of the economy for that to happen.
Yeah, they blamed us for that.
So Mr. 303 says Large Mohammed is definitely disabled. Who is Large Mohammed? Is that a
I don't know.
Okay, so Mr. 303 is going to have to explain that to me in the after show, which we're probably going to head to here soon, because I think we've gotten all the discussion, just about all the discussion we're going to get out of the story.
She who should not be named doesn't like incels no more.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Let's see. We have, did I read the one from Richard Beer about Soylent Green? If not, he gave us $5 and said, coming soon to grocery store shelves everywhere. Look for Soylent Green at your favorite grocery store. Hey, Richard, guess what?
It's
soy. There's a soy-based nutritional supplement beverage called Soylent, Soylent. I do not know who thought this was good marketing, okay? But they sell it in different formulas, and each formula has a color, and one of those colors is green. So you can go to a store in the US that sells this type of nutritional supplement, and you can buy Soylent Green today.
So now on to the movie.
I guess not. Now they can't do a remake, but it exists. It's a real thing.
They haven't done a remake on Logan Swan either.
See if I can find the green one. Yeah. Here's a image of what it looks like. Let me see if I can get it to. This is the packaging. That's the chocolate one, right? I don't remember what flavor the green one. It's a meal replacement drink, but I don't remember what flavor the green one is. But it exists. It's real. Let's see if I can find a picture on the. Here's a picture of it on the shelf, but you can't read it, so I still don't know what flavor that is. But there's the green one right there. So
you can. People.
It probably is. You can find Soylent Green now. But there we go. So then we have Richard Bier also gave us $5 and said hospitals were getting handsome reimbursement from the government for every reported COVID case and deaths. Makes me wonder what kind of reimbursement structure there is for so many medical centers having such a plethora of transgender patients that it becomes so widespread. That's a possibility too. They might be getting an amount per head. Yes. Tiny Tim, Large Mohammed. I see what you did there, Mr. 303.
Oh,
okay.
And also, the Conservatives didn't care about the trans thing until girls started to transition.
True.
And I keep saying that to them. I keep saying that to them, and they block me. They block me every time.
Of course. I think we did a show about that actually. When it started suddenly happening that autistic girls were transing. Because I remember Karen talking about it, like just because you're different doesn't mean you have to become the opposite sex. You can be different and identify as who you are. But yeah, in the meantime, next week, let's see, I think this is what we just went over. Yeah, I think this is what I had in mind next, and this is the actual paper. This one's a little drier, but there has been some discussion about how bad it's gotten in Canada. And so I definitely want to take a look at some of the bits from this next week. And I think we also have the bill. Yeah, this is the bill that is actually up in the UK for an upcoming vote. I don't know how soon the next vote will be or how long it will take for it to become law after that.
It'll probably be in September because they're in recess at the minute.
That is always good when they're not there because they're not making laws like this. But so we've got a little bit more to do on this. And then once we're done with that, there are a couple of other things that I've already got waiting in the wings. One of them is this, Fair into Relationships, which is a bill that's under discussion it's essentially a palimony bill for the UK. And then there was something that you sent me too, Richard, that I don't think I opened or kept it open. But it was another thing that I think that needs to be talked about, like actually discussed on the show. It was before the thing about adults with disabilities, so I'll have to go back and look. It might have been the thing about men dropping out of society.
Yeah, I think that, because it's like there's a radio station called LBC, and they keep spreading lies about why men are dropping out, and they don't get to the root of the problem.
They're not going to because they want to. There's a attitude that people have toward men. They think men will forever accept nagging as a reason why they need to change what they're doing. And I think men are figuring out that they They can't let people nag them into giving up their self-interest. So that's an upcoming discussion as well. And once we are done with that, I also have a plan to discuss. There is we may step in before all of that with an article, another Daily Mail article, Fathers Driven to Suicide by the Child Maintenance Service. And then I also have a piece of research coming up that I want to look at, which kind of turns the common beliefs about who is the aggressor and who is the victim in domestic violence situations on its head.
I keep saying that somebody found that in the 70s, but no one believes me.
Yep, that information has been around for a long time. I believe there is recently a piece of research that came out, though, that I've been looking at that I think gives us more confirmation. It's a more recent bit of research on bidirectional and unidirectional intimate partner violence. It's a review, comprehensive review of multiple studies. So it's not just one thing. And it's done by 3 women, but it did show a higher level of abuse by women than previously believed, and a higher level of victimization of male victims than previously believed. So it's definitely something we'll want to look at in the future as well. So these are all things that are, like I said, just upcoming. Give you an idea of what our future shows are going to be. And then there's some discussions that are coming up. Probably about once a month, I'll be doing a discussion with Allison, but we're not ready to start that yet. So I'll give you more information when we get closer to doing that. The last thing is we will be doing another mixed up meetup this year. It will be the last Saturday in August, and I had a calendar up, and now I don't, and so I don't know the date of the last Saturday. I gotta look, open up my stupid calendar again, and
I can't get my passport sorted in time for it.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to plan the one for next year, this year, instead of me waiting until a few months before to get started. But let's see. So the last Saturday in August is Saturday the 29th. And we're going back to tradition. We will be meeting at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Museum. So it's on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And the reason that we're starting there is because that's a safe place to start. There isn't much more guarded in this area than the base, and it's a public venue, so we can be there. They're gonna know we aren't gonna be disruptive, because only an idiot would go onto a military base right now and be disruptive, and we're not idiots, right?
I could have worn my No Man T-shirt.
There you go. And we'll spend some time at the museum, and then we will go to our secondary location from there. So anybody that wants to come, it'll be that Saturday. I'm going to be showing up there. I think we should start at about noon. So I'm going to be showing up there at noon. So I don't want to make it too early of a thing. And then from there, after we're done looking at the museum, then we'll go to the second venue. We can caravan there. It's not a great distance. It's a couple of miles through the city, and not too many turns to get there either. But I can give everybody the information once you are at the museum, and that I'm doing to prevent harassment of any venue, because only an idiot would harass a venue that is on a military base And nobody's going to be able to harass the venue if they don't know what it is, the second venue if they don't know what it is, right? So there you go. So if you want to, I will definitely be there. I believe Brian's going to be there. Going to try to get Mike and Lauren. Don't know how that's going to work. We may end up having to try to do a fundraiser or something to get them there. And we don't have an iPad robot. Sorry, Mr. Roboto. Mr. Roboto 1234567 says gave us $1 and said, "Will Allison zoom in via iPad robot?" But we may be able to get in touch with her in other, just a regular Discord call or something. But there you go. So with that, I will thank everybody for listening. I hope we will get some people wanting to attend the Mixed Up Meetup. And I'll try to make a post about it in the next couple of days on the HBB blog and on Breaking the Glasses. And I'm not going to make a pleading the fifth joke. That's going to be all Mike. So thanks everybody, and good night all. We will see you next Thursday.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.